This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening, thanks for joining us. A jury has been chosen in the case of a Winnipeg man accused of killing 4 women in 2022. Jeremy Skibicki has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck was in court for jury selection, and a warning, some of the details are distressing.
More than 150 people gathered for jury duty in the Winnipeg courthouse Thursday morning. But only about 20 were questioned by a judge in front of Jeremy Skibicki, the man accused of killing 4 women in 2022. Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myron, Morgan Harris, and an unidentified woman given the name Mashkade Bishike Kweiban, or Buffalo Woman. Even before the judge selected jurors, he told them graphic allegations about the case, that Skibicki is accused of taking the women home and sexually assaulting some of them, before allegedly killing them and performing sex acts on their bodies. He's pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. Then, one by one, possible jurors either swore on a Bible, affirmed, or swore on an eagle feather before answering questions about whether they'd heard about the case or participated in related protests or vigils. They were also asked about whether it mattered to them that the victims were Indigenous women, and if they'd be open to finding someone not criminally responsible. Several jurors were excused, including one woman who had travel plans, and another who, when asked about finding someone not criminally responsible, said, "Guilty is guilty." Just over half the jurors ultimately selected for trial said they'd heard about the case before, while one woman selected for the jury said she'd donated to a camp for one of the victims. The final jury is made up of 9 women and 3 men. The jury starts hearing evidence May 8th. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba RCMP have made an arrest in a double homicide in a remote northern community. The 2 victims were found dead following a house fire in Northland's Dene Sulene First Nation on September 9th, 2021. As the families continue to grieve, today police announced a breakthrough in the case. The CBC's Zubina Ahmed reports.
Families of Brendan O'Cheesy and Leona Tessa Z came together in Winnipeg today to share fond memories of their loved ones.
He played hockey when he was younger, and he loved the Winnipeg Jets. It was his dream to make it to a live game, a dream he won't see happen.
She used to come home at night and cuddle by my side and tell me she loved me. We would talk and laugh. It hurt so much to know I won't get to do that with her again.
On Monday, April 22nd, Manitoba RCMP arrested the 22-year-old suspect, Leon Paul McCready, in Fond du Lac, Saskatchewan. RCMP Superintendent Rob Larson says the victims were in the home with the suspect when there was a disagreement. Larson says the suspect left the house and returned with a firearm.
As per investigation, the autopsies confirmed that their cause of deaths were indeed result of injuries sustained by the firearm. Investigation has outlined that the house was then seen engulfed in flames.
Larson says the investigation took 2.5 years and wouldn't have been possible without the help of the community and mothers of the victims.
I can absolutely say when we engaged the community responded wholeheartedly. Throughout and in conjunction with all of these public pleas, our investigators continued their work and built the investigation with continued collaboration and support from the community.
Simon Denochisi is the chief of the Northland's Dene Sulene First Nation. He says today brings some relief and closure, but there are mixed feelings.
The RC arrested a man who was from our community, a man we know, a man whose family is still living with us in our community. They're part of the community. We cannot live in anger. We must move forward. We must move forward in healing, and we must do it together.
The suspect is now in custody in Winnipeg. RCMP say they don't believe anyone else was involved. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Heather Stephenson is leaving political life. The first woman to serve as Manitoba's premier announced today she's resigning as MLA for Tuxedo. Now, to look back at Stephenson's tenure and what's next, the CBC's Ian Fraze is live in our newsroom. And Ian, what did Stephenson say in her final speech as a politician?
Her message, Brittany, was one of thankfulness to Manitobans, to her Tuxedo constituency, and to her family.
Serving as MLA, minister, and the first woman premier has been the honor of a lifetime. These roles allowed me to serve Manitobans and help pave the way for future generations of women in public service. Thank you, Manitoba, for the opportunity, the responsibility, and the honor.
Stephenson became Progressive Conservative leader and premier in 2021. She backed away from the austerity approach of former Premier Brian Palliser, but the PC still fell short in last year's election. Stephenson says she's proud of what she believes her government accomplished.
We achieved record economic growth and job creation, enacted record tax relief, ran one of the country's most successful vaccine programs, and balanced the budget while making historic investments in healthcare, in education, and in social services. We have set the table for success into the future for Manitoba.
Heather Stephenson, of course, stepped down as leader after a divisive election campaign. Now, she's apologized for ads touting her government's opposition to a landfill search. So, Ian, what are her political rivals now saying?
The NDP's Wab Kinew has been quite critical of that election campaign, but today he stuck with pleasantries.
Later today, I will reread the letter that she left for me on the desk in the Premier's office and reflect on our shared commitment to the people of Manitoba.
She is a member who I have watched and I have admired throughout my young childhood, entering a career in politics as a young woman, and she truly is an inspiration for being the first female premier here in Manitoba.
Now, Ian, Stephenson says she won't run for political office again, so what's next for her?
She wouldn't elaborate today, but says she has some irons in the fire.
Stay tuned. Isn't that what I've always said before? I'm very excited, and I will say that it was very important to me to end one chapter before going on to the next chapter, but I'm very much looking forward to the next chapter in life.
Her resignation is effective May 6th. A by-election must happen in Tuxedo within 6 months. Brittany.
All right. CBC's Ian Fraze. Thanks, Ian. The province is investigating a school board in Western Manitoba over comments made by a trustee at a meeting earlier this week. Paul Coffey is accused of sharing hateful opinions and misinformation about inclusion policies and residential schools. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel breaks down what happened and the backlash.
Paul Coffey is one of 9 school board trustees in the Mountain View School Division. He gave a presentation at a board meeting Monday that's being condemned by organizations and parents. We heard from an Indigenous mother whose 2 children go to school in the division. Jerry Thompson told us she wants Coffey to resign.
The more and more I listened to it, the more things that I found just shocking.
Coffey's presentation was live streamed, and a recording is available on the division's website. In it, he identified as having European and Indigenous ancestry, including Assiniboine and Chippewa roots. Coffey accused certain inclusion and reconciliation initiatives of causing division and expressed disapproval of funding they were getting. He referred to Indigenous people as, quote, Indians, and took issue with other terms like white privilege.
I find that interesting that now just to blame another race, that's kind of simply solving the problem. Get rid of the white people and you'll get rid of the problem. So it's kind of a nice thing until it isn't. So white privilege is a racist comment.
Coffey's presentation lasted more than 20 minutes. He also expressed doubt over the number of Indigenous people who attended residential schools.
You have to start to wonder how authentic it is when there's absolutely no good stories in Canada about the residential schools. How is that possible? There's got to be one good story.
It's these comments in particular that trouble Jerry Thompson the most.
It worries me because I am very active in my daughter's school right now, and I see the progress that's being made. They're more proud of their culture, their history, because it's more accepted in the schools now.
Thompson fears what would happen if education and reconciliation funding were cut.
Then we're back to square one where I was in school, and I used to hide the fact that I was Indigenous.
Meanwhile, the Parkland Human Rights Alliance has sent a letter to Manitoba's education minister, asking him to do whatever he can to remove coffee from the school board. Education Minister Nello Altomar says the province is launching a governance review of the board.
We're concerned about the presentation, and we're also concerned that the presentation was even allowed to proceed at the board meeting.
In a public statement, the division's Board of Trustees says Coffey's comments are his own and that he was not speaking on behalf of the board. It says the division stands against racism and stands by its reconciliation work. As of Wednesday, Coffey had not answered a request for comment. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg City Council voted unanimously today to approve funding to clean up homeless encampments. Council approved a pilot project. It would be operated by Main Street Project, Silo Mission, and the Downtown Community Safety Partnership. The city will contribute up to $170,000. City Council also voted today to approve plans for residential development on the Parker lands. They voted Thursday to rezone 19 hectares of land in Fort Garry to make way for residential development called Fulton Grove. Developer Andrew Marquis wants to build almost 2,000 residential units on this land. The plan calls for a mix of apartment towers, townhouse triplexes, duplexes, and single-family homes. This has been in the works for more than a decade.
At the end of the day, we need housing developed. I'm looking forward to, seeing that land ultimately become housing that is much needed.
Marquis has repeatedly accused city planning officials of placing roadblocks in the way of the development. He went to court over it twice and won, though the city has appealed the second case. Graduation is a special time for many students, but for one soon to be a grad at the Marymount Pathways program, it's an achievement that once seemed impossible. CBC's Zubina Ahmed brings you Drew Blaine's story.
Chop, cut, bake, grill, clean. For 17-year-old Drew Blaine, cooking helps him cope with his challenges.
Yikes. Life dream, yeah. I like cooking.
Okay, and why do you like cooking?
Well, I like eating, like the thought of feeding people. And overall, I just like having something to make.
Living with autism disorder and having a challenging home life, Blaine discovered his purpose and passion for cooking. He works at Marymount, a youth and family social services organization, as part of the Student Work Education Experience Program, or SWEEP.
Prep vegetables, bake cookies, or bake anything. Usually the lunch will be on there, so you make that.
Blaine recalls his difficult past
It was
while
a lot of
growing
back and
up.
forth due to my parents being, drug addicts, to put it as simply as that. So it was like early life with my mom, unhappy. My grandma was happy, went back to my mom, unhappy. Went back to my grandma, unhappy up until like 12. Went back to my mom, I think at like 14 or something. Was unhappy until, for again, another year.
Blaine has been working at the Marymount kitchen for 2 years since grade 10. He comes here twice a week in morning shifts and juggles between school and cooking here. Through the help of his mentors, he's learning all the preparatory skills required to be a chef.
Very eager to learn, very excited to be here. And from day one, he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to culinary school, and nothing was going to stop him whatsoever, which was so wonderful. His passion was there.
Definitely been great. It's changed my life in many ways.
Through the Marymount Scholarship and help of his teachers at Pathways, Blaine got into Red River College for the Indigenous Culinary course.
And I can confidently say, without Pathways, I would not have gotten anywhere near this.
Zabina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg's annual curbside giveaway weekend is fast approaching. This year, Winnipeggers can put out their unwanted and still usable items at the curb on May 11th and 12th. The idea behind the weekend is to reduce waste and keep items out of the landfill by giving them a new home. Also happening in the second week of May, the city's annual compost giveaway. Free compost will be available at multiple locations across the city. People can take home up to 100 litres of compost per car. Riley Lachak joins us now. And Riley, wouldn't have been a bad day for giveaway day today.
I do love a good deal.
Nice and sunny, but very windy out there.
Very windy. You know, I'm just looking south out our studio windows here, and you can see what looks like cloud cover, but it's actually dust.
Yeah.
That's how windy it is. Let's have a look at some of the peak wind gusts today. Keep in mind, these are from Environment Canada's top of the clock readings from the weather stations across the province. So yes, we may have seen some stronger gusts than we likely did, but here's just sort of a sampling, I guess, to give you a guide of where some of the stronger gusts that we saw today were. So for example, at the airport this afternoon, hitting a gust at 70 this afternoon, 50s through the Interlake, and even some stronger ones back to the south and into the Parkland region, seeing wind gusts today almost to 70 kilometers an hour. So yes, it was a really dusty and a really windy day, and that will continue as we get through the overnight hour here. So you can see I've stopped here at 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday, and yes, we're even seeing some of those gusts over the 70 kilometer mark according to the forecast modeling. Anyway, not as windy back to the west, but we will see still fairly gusty conditions as we head into the morning Friday. Backing off a bit by the time we get to the afternoon, but generally we're looking at winds southeast 20 gusting 40 through the afternoon, and you can see by supper time tomorrow, winds even dropping off to about 10 or so in Winnipeg. So yes, another day or so of windy conditions left. Saturday, another windy day across the province as well. So looking at satellite and radar, we do have a little bit of shower activity starting to move through the Parkland region right now. As expected, we'll start to see a bit more in the way of shower activity pushing in as we get into the overnight hours here. So you can see starting Friday along a cold front ahead of an area of low pressure that is up over Hudson Bay. Yes, some showers, some heavier pockets of rain even. And first thing in the morning through the overnight hours especially, can't rule out maybe even a rumble of thunder or some lightning. I'm not talking severe thunderstorms by any means, but yes, we could see a couple of rumbles of thunder through the overnight period. Friday, yes, on and off light rain through the day, at least to the Red River Valley, back to the west, sunnier conditions through Friday and Saturday, and we start to see a bit more clearing as we get through Saturday and into Sunday. In terms of accumulations, general 10 to 15 millimeters across the Red River Valley. Could see some higher pockets though, especially along that cold front that will push through the morning tomorrow, but yeah, we are looking at about 10 to 15 millimeters of rain. The north getting a bit of rain as well into that 5 millimeter range along the Hudson Bay coast. Some of this, of course, could be falling as some flurry activity as well. So 22 degrees in Winnipeg right now, dropping down to 11. A risk we could see some thunder showers overnight tonight with south winds gusting to 50. First thing in the morning, periods of rain, and that continues into the afternoon. The temperature really not going anywhere tomorrow along with those periods of rain. We do start to see a little bit more sunshine as we head through Saturday and Sunday. And Brittany, a chance of more April showers coming your way as we get into next week. And I guess start May as we get into next week as well.
I'm going to have to find my umbrella.
Yes, you will.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Legendary hockey broadcaster Bob Cole has died. He was 90 years old. Cole was the Hockey Night in Canada play-by-play voice for countless NHL games for 50 years. He called his last game a Toronto-Montreal matchup 5 years ago. Peter Cowan has this look back at Cole's remarkable career.
Anderson going and he scores!
Bob Cole was there for all the big moments, the wins, the losses, bringing his excitement for hockey and his catchphrases, like during the 1991 Stanley Cup Final.
He was the storyteller of hockey for generations of people like me. You could tell what was happening on the ice by the urgency of his voice. You could kind of close your eyes and you knew what hockey was all about when you heard Bob speak.
Bob Cole got a start in Newfoundland calling regional games. In the 1960s, he was behind the mic for his first NHL game on CBC Radio. Then in the 1970s, he joined Hockey Night in Canada on television, where he stayed for 50 years. Ron McLean first met Cole when he started hosting Hockey Night in Canada in the 1980s.
And Bob Cole walked into the studio and he said, watched the whole game last night. Don't change a thing. And he just, he elevated me then when I was a kid, 26, and he elevated me this weekend when I'm 64. So how do you thank someone for that?
Cole was a proud Newfoundlander, and his home was proud of him too. The media box in the Mary Brown Centre in St. John's bears his name. Glenn Stanford has headed a half-dozen professional hockey teams.
Bob Cole is synonymous in the hockey industry, and obviously from a provincial perspective, one of our own, a proud Newfoundland guys. So, a sad day for hockey and a sad day for the province for sure.
For a man who spent decades on television, he didn't like to draw attention to himself. For him, it was all about the hockey.
And never mind me or whomever broadcasting, enjoy the game. And I'm trying to pass the message along to the viewers that I am enjoying the game. Done my job.
He kept calling games well into his 80s. His last NHL game was just 5 years ago. Bob Cole was 90 years old. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
New York's highest court has overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction and ordered a new trial today. We'll have reaction to the decision after the break. New York's highest court overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction today, and it's ordered a new trial for the disgraced movie mogul. The court ruled that the judge at Weinstein's landmark Me Too trial prejudiced him with improper rulings. Jamie Strachan has the details.
For Harvey Weinstein's accusers, old wounds ripped open after the former Hollywood movie mogul's 2020 sex crimes conviction was overturned.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal, and our institutions betray survivors of male sexual violence.
In a 4-3 decision, New York's highest court ordered a new trial, ruling that the judge should never have allowed women to testify about allegations that were not part of the case.
It's so rare. Statistically speaking, cases are virtually never reversed on appeal.
Weinstein had been serving a 23-year sentence for the alleged sexual assault of 2 people.
Court of Appeals deserves a tremendous amount of credit for doing this, based on the law, not based on popularity contests.
In a dissenting opinion, Justice Madeline Singas said men who serially sexually exploit their power over women, especially the most vulnerable groups in society, will reap the benefit of today's decision. The Weinstein case in New York was a seminal verdict, the first criminal conviction of the Me Too movement, America's reckoning with sexual misconduct.
And a lot of us felt that we were on a road to seeing a different America. And this moment makes it feel like we were wrong.
The Manhattan District Attorney's Office indicated it will retry this case. Lawyer Gloria Allred represents one of the accusers in the New York case.
It will be more difficult to convict those who victimize women and who prey on them. And because it will be more difficult to convict, I can foresee that there may be fewer criminal prosecutions brought.
Weinstein is not a free man. Last year, he was sentenced in Los Angeles to 16 years in prison for charges of rape and sexual assault. He's also appealing that decision. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Japanese automaker Honda has announced a multi-billion-dollar electric vehicle investment in Ontario. It will build new manufacturing plants in the province, and at its centre will be a complex north of Toronto. The CBC's Idil Musa reports.
It's being touted as the largest auto investment in Canada's history.
This is absolutely historic.
Japanese automaker Honda is investing $15 billion to build 4 new electric vehicle manufacturing plants in Ontario. The deal includes establishing Honda's first electric vehicle assembly plant, as well as a new standalone EV battery plant at Honda's facility in Alliston, Ontario.
These investments will create well over 1,000 well-paying manufacturing jobs.
The federal government and province are each contributing about $2.5 billion in investment tax credits and through various direct and indirect incentives.
Canada is planning for zero emissions by 2035. So a lot of these movements need to be done. The demand will catch up eventually, but in the meantime, you have to make the investment.
This employment director in Alliston says Honda's investment will also have a positive, lasting impact on the wider community.
It's the spin-off jobs. So there's a lot of parts manufacturers that will now support that facility. But it's the small little mom and pop shops around those facilities too that benefit from more customers.
The new Honda facility will be the 3rd EV battery plant in the province, after Volkswagen in St. Thomas and Stellantis in Windsor. The federal government and automakers say once the assembly plant is fully operational in 2028, it will produce up to 240,000 vehicles per year. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
A sweeping new report is shedding light on a quiet crisis unfolding in many Canadian hospitals: the growing cost and longer treatment time for those dealing with homelessness. Some facilities are looking at new ways to help those patients navigate the healthcare system better. Lauren Pelly reports.
Mickey Ball is a regular face at this Toronto hospital.
I've been to the hospital about 60 times in the last 2 years.
All while she was living in a park downtown. She says being homeless took a toll on her health, from breathing issues to a mild heart attack.
I've been here for a lot of reasons, My back, my legs swelled up really bad, and I was thinking that I had a blood clot.
Since 2018, hospitals across Canada have been required to track when patients are homeless.
A new report shows there were nearly 30,000 hospitalizations among homeless individuals between 2022 and 2023. The vast majority came through busy emergency departments.
The top 3 reasons were substance use disorders, serious mental health conditions, and cellulitis, a bacterial skin infection. Hospital stays among homeless Canadians were also nearly twice as long and cost more than double the national average.
They may have very serious conditions. They are also in hospital for a longer period of time. And because there may be challenges to discharge that patient to maybe a more appropriate care setting.
The outreach team here works with patients like Ball to help them find a place to live.
This is my home sweet home for my house.
But the team says without enough shelter spaces or affordable housing options in Canada, those success stories don't happen often.
Up until today, it's been months and months since we've actually secured a shelter for somebody.
When there is no shelter space, they come to us.
This physician says housing investments could also benefit Canada's strained healthcare system.
I think we really need to understand homelessness as a healthcare issue, that just as much as we need food and water, we need places to be safe and warm.
Otherwise, thousands of Canadians will remain out in the cold with all the health problems that come with it. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Donald Trump's hush money trial continues today in New York. And in Washington, the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing arguments involving a different Trump case, stemming from charges tied to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results when Trump lost. One where the former president is claiming he should have absolute immunity from prosecution. Reporter Carolyn Malone has the details.
The Supreme Court justices heard arguments from both sides of the case on Thursday, both from the prosecution side that want to move forward with an election interference case against former President Donald Trump, but can't do so until the question of immunity is answered. Now, Trump's lawyers, of course, have argued that he should be immune. That's why this case has come all the way up to the Supreme Court. They say in all the events leading up to January 6th, to the Capitol attack, all the conversations he had, he was acting in an official capacity as president in the White House at the time, and therefore that he shouldn't be tried. But this is an incredibly important case, so the Supreme Court justices were debating back and forward over a number of details, in particular because it doesn't just influence Donald Trump, this has an impact on future presidents as well.
If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical. There's also a scenario in which the Supreme Court decide that it's so complicated they actually have to send the case back to the lower courts to debate some of the finer details of this argument. At the moment, they're not likely to give a full opinion until at least the end of June, early July, before they recess for the summer. That means that if any other trials do go ahead, that wouldn't likely happen until midsummer or later. And by that time, we're getting into the later stages of the campaigning ahead of the presidential election here in the United States, which of course is highly likely to be between the same two candidates, current President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Caroline Malone in Washington for CBC News.
Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry officially resigned today, clearing the way for a new transitional government in the Caribbean nation. The country has been overrun by chaos and deadly gang violence for months. A 9-member council has been sworn in. It will help set the agenda for a new cabinet and prepare the country for fresh elections in the future. Meantime, remaining cabinet ministers tapped Finance Minister Michelle Patrick Boisvert to serve as interim Prime Minister. Boisvert will work with the council to address the gang-fueled crisis. More than 2,500 people have been killed or injured since January, and thousands are displaced. A new UN report says about 1.5 million people in Haiti are a step away from famine. A mass stranding of pilot whales in Western Australia leaves dozens dead and scientists puzzled. That story and Riley Lachak is back with your Manitoba forecast after the break.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned. And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
A distressing story to share now from Australia. Marine experts are trying to understand why about 140 pilot whales beached in southwest of Perth Perth. At least 29 of the stranded animals have since died. But local residents are trying to help the remaining whales back into the ocean. Here's a look at the latest rescue efforts.
We removed the dead whales from the water, so that's what you can see. We tried to get them up out of the water line to stop encouraging the other whales that were in the water to re-strand or to strand back again. So we've got vessels out on the water, and we've also got spotter plane up in the air that's doing searches over every couple of hours just to see where they are. And so far so good. They haven't made it back to shore, but we will keep monitoring them.
Sometimes it might be a member of the pod is ill and the others follow. Sometimes it might be some kind of noise disturbance. Disease can be a factor, so it's very varied. We're taking a number of samples, particularly the priority is to exclude infectious diseases.
Oh, every whale stranding is different, and there's different circumstances and different situations, so it's hard to say, but we'll try and take as many samples as we can to see if there's anything happening in the population.
Riley's back at the desk with me. And Riley, it's one of the types of forecasts that I always look forward to because I need to know, what do I need to wear tomorrow when taking the dog out for a walk in the morning? Is it going to be humid with my hair really big? Am I going to need an umbrella? Tell me what we need.
Well, we're still looking at some breezy conditions, Brittany, so maybe the hat would be a good thing first thing in the morning. Let's take a look here. Yes, we're looking at gusty conditions continuing as we get into the morning. And yes, maybe the umbrella would be not a bad idea as well, because we're looking at periods of rain on and off through your Friday. Temperature around 11-12 degrees, so not cool, but that rain certainly will kind of cool things down and kind of dampen the dust around down a bit as well. So thank you to Angie and her family for sending this picture of Rex in. You can send your photos anytime to talkback@cbc.ca, especially if you've dressed your pet up in Jets whiteout gear. I'd love to see that and show it next week too. Getting up to the low 20s across much of southern Manitoba. 25s though in both Portage-la Prairie, Morden, Winkler, 16 the high today in Thompson. Here as we get through the supper hour, even still seeing some temperatures in the 20s. Eli at 25 right now. Gimli is at 20 and still some low 20s really across southern Manitoba. Northern Manitoba seeing a few cooler temperatures. To do the Lake and Churchill both below zero right now, but 15s to 20s generally across the rest of northern Manitoba. So we'll see periods of rain starting through the overnight period tonight across much of southern Manitoba. Slim chance we could see a few rumbles of thunder as well. Temperatures around 11-12 degrees for the most part. 6s though for Roblin and Swan River overnight tonight. Northern Manitoba single digits tonight. Less of a chance of some showers, at least through Flin Flon, the Pas Grand Rapids, but we could see some of that beginning through the overnight period along the Hudson Bay coast. Through tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures around 12 degrees in the Pas by lunchtime. 12 to 15 for central parts of northern Manitoba, a bit cooler where we don't have that sunshine through the day tomorrow. So we'll see some rain moving through first thing in the morning. Continuing as we get through the afternoon hours for southern Manitoba, getting up to 19 in Verdun tomorrow, just around 11-12 degrees for the Red River Valley as we see this line of showers move through and more organized rain moving in as we get into the later part of Friday. Kenora looking at a high of 8 tomorrow and 14, Brittany, tomorrow in Dryden.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Italy's famed lagoon city of Venice launched a new tourism program, a fee to enter. While most cities work to attract tourists, Venice is aiming the opposite direction. It says it's overwhelmed. City space is small, the population is only around 50,000, and tourists last year numbered an estimated 20 million. The fee is small, targeting day trippers only. It doesn't apply after 4:30 p.m., and it's only being enforced by spot checks. Jurors have now been selected for the trial of a man accused of killing 4 women here in Winnipeg. 12 people chosen from a pool of more than 100 potential jurors. But how does the process work here in Canada? More on that after the break. I want to start with a warning. This story deals with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and may be triggering for some people. As you heard earlier, the jury was selected for alleged killer Jeremy Skibicki today. He's accused of killing 3 First Nations women and an unidentified woman believed to be Indigenous. Information Radio's Marcy Marcusa spoke with Michael Spratt, a criminal law specialist, earlier today. He says serving on a jury is an obligation and a privilege, but it can also be an onerous experience, and jurors should represent the community.
So we want them to be diverse. We want them filled with people of different genders, different backgrounds, different races, different religions. We want them to be a truly representative jury. But that can be really difficult because of some of the systemic biases built into the process. Across Canada, we all compensate our jurors very poorly. And so that means if you are someone who is a working class individual, someone that doesn't come from privilege, someone who works night, shift work, someone who is living paycheck to paycheck, an ordinary person, it can be very hard to sit on a jury. If you're someone who's a single mom or a single dad or doesn't have family or community support to help look after your kids or help take care of your obligations, it might prevent you from sitting on a jury. And the names where we get those potential jurors from, the way that we fill the names, we fill that list, can also be met with some systemic and some bias, because it can be drawn from tax rolls or from other ways that may exclude a certain number of people. So our juries generally are comprised of those privileged enough to be able to sit on long trials, and that makes them not really representative of our communities.
This is also, of course, a very high-profile case. How challenging from that perspective might the next several weeks be for the jurors?
Yeah, the other thing we don't do very well is look after our juries after trials. A lot of times what we see in court is very different from what we would experience in our day-to-day lives. There can be, troubling pictures, troubling images, troubling evidence. The topic matter is heavy and serious, and can be trauma-inducing. As defense lawyers, we know this really well because we don't have, pensions and paid leave and things like that. And so we sort of get a sense of what these jurors are feeling, because after a jury can experience and deliberate not only this monumental choice about guilt or innocence, but all of the disturbing evidence that goes into that, it can be quite an emotionally traumatic experience. And that can prevent some people from sitting on the jury too, because we just don't have mechanisms and we haven't prioritized making sure that our juries are healthy during the course of the trial and after the trial.
So the follow-through support is something you're saying that could be improved in this country. And what are the realities about, what if you do sit as a juror, you're not allowed to talk about the case, right? Like usually when somebody's working through something, you talk about it. But one of the things is you can't talk about it.
That's right. And I mean, this is an important sort of protection that we have. We need to make sure that jurors aren't influenced by anything, that they don't predetermine a decision, that they don't, come to conclusions before they've heard all of the evidence and all of the arguments, because a jury's verdict is a guilty or not guilty verdict. We don't have reasons. So we can't go behind that verdict. So we have to make sure that, we put every protection in place to make sure that it's a fair and just verdict. But yeah, that means they can't talk to their families. They sometimes, couldn't talk to a counselor. They can't talk to each other about it. So it can be a very isolating experience as well. And especially in a trial like this one, it's going to be a lengthy trial that spans a number of weeks. It can leave jurors feeling isolated, alone. And, that in itself can lead to, I think, some decisions that may not be correct.
What is something, just in closing here, what is something that you think still needs to change in the way that we select juries in Canada?
I think that we need to make sure that we eliminate all prejudice and bias from our juries. We need to make sure that decisions are based on the evidence and not based on extrinsic and irrelevant factors. And the tools that we have to make sure that our juries are biased, aren't racist, for example, is to, ask the juror basically, are you racist? And the juror will say yes or no. That's probably not good enough. And we need to come up with a better way maybe not the system we see in the US where there's, days of in-depth questioning and combing through social media, but there simply needs to be better ways to make sure that our juries evaluate cases based on evidence and get it right the first time, because it's a serious issue for everyone involved.
Still ahead, Riley Lachek is back with our last check on the weather forecast. Stay with us.
Well, here's a look at your day planner for your Friday. And yes, we're looking at a bit of a rainy day tomorrow. So periods of rain on and off, temperature around 12 degrees. We're starting still with windy conditions in the morning, southeast 30 to 50, backing off to 20 to 40 by the time we hit the afternoon hours tomorrow. And yes, on and off rain as we head through the day, about 10 to 15 millimeters or so. Friday's still a bit of a breezy day, a high of 9 degrees. Then we see our next best chances of precipitation coming through Monday, Tuesday. We have a system rolling through that'll bring a good chance of showers through Monday, lingering into Tuesday morning, and then we get more sunshine towards the middle end of next week to start May. Well, tonight's Daily Lift is an update to one that we previously brought you. A woman from BC now giving new meaning to the old saying, let them eat cake. In this case, Brittany, it's the wedding cake that she discovered at the bottom of her freezer dating back to 1968.
Oh my goodness. She threw a family gathering to, oh my goodness, give it a taste test. Here's your Daily Lift.
What is that?
It's wedding cake. That's wedding cake.
That's a 55-year-old wedding cake.
That's right, buddy. What is that? That's Rochelle Marr with two members of her bridal party from her wedding 55 years ago. Family and friends got to sample the decades-old brandy-soaked fruitcake. They all said it was still tasty and delicious, despite the decades that had passed.
Now, she originally tucked it away in the freezer after her nuptials with the intent of eating it on her 50th anniversary, but she forgot when that milestone came and went.
I still feel like that's a long time.
A long time. I wonder if it tasted freezer burned.
Oh.
Unless she has a really good freezer.
I am guilty of keeping condiments that I probably shouldn't.
It's a good ad for a freezer, I think.
Have a wonderful night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.